tune into Turntable Taxi on KSJE Saturday nights at 8 o'clock. Each week, we select a musical style and play 78s, 45s, and 33 RPM records. Some of our themes will include swing music, blues, heart-wrenching torch songs, early rock and roll, girl groups, soul, and R&B.
This program is supported by San Juan Health Partners Urology, providing a wide range of personalized services for the whole family, including children. Our caring professionals are dedicated to helping meet your urology health needs with skill, experience, and service you need. For a complete listing of our services and to learn more, visit sanjuanhealthpartners.com or call 505-609-6300. San Juan Health Partners Urology, a division of San Juan Regional Medical Center. "11 minutes past 8 o'clock. Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, December 6th. Thanks for tuning in to KSJE, 90.9 FM and 90.9 HD. We're also streaming, of course, at KSJE.com. And you can watch our visual radio program this morning live from our visual radio studio here at San Juan College. Just go to our KSJE Facebook page, or you can certainly watch us on the KSJE channel on YouTube. Good morning, everybody. Once again, I'm Scott Michlin, and thank you for tuning in this morning. Coming up in just a moment, my guest on the program this morning, archaeologist Paul Reed, is going to be joining us in just a few moments from his home near Taos, so stay tuned for that. Always a fascinating discussion with him. And then, of course, later on this hour, as we do on Thursdays, we'll try to make heads or tails of what's going on in the stock market these days. This morning, we're talking about the bond market because there's some interesting things happening there. So tune in and stay tuned for that coming up this morning at about 8:50 here on KSJE. Mick Hess is along on the radio beginning at 9 a.m. It's Roving with the Arts today. More holiday music from this album that you're seeing on the screen if you're watching us. It's Heaven Hath a Song from the Tucson, Arizona Boys Choir. Some selections from that album coming up this morning at 9 on Roving with the Arts with Mick Hess. And then don't forget our local movie review program, A Review Too Far, today at noon. And today our reviewers are talking about that new animated film from with The Grinch, called The Grinch, coming up at noon. We'll let you know what they thought about that new film today on KSJE. So lots of things to check out, of course. You can always check out our programming schedule by going to our website, and that is found at KSJE.com. It's also where you'll find our regional events calendar, which is where we'll take you now that you're watching some items that are coming up. Astro Friday happening this week, the Star of Bethlehem program at our San Juan College Planetarium. Don't forget about the Christmas Carol on stage at San Juan College as well. This is the last weekend for that. There's an African drumming concert coming up outside of town. If you're heading to Albuquerque, there's a historic Old Town Stroll on December 7th in Albuquerque this weekend. The Nutcracker on stage up in Durango as well. There's a bird walk over at the Riverside Nature Center. So again, lots of things to check out from our regional events calendar at KSJE.com. And with that being said, I do want to go to our guest who is joining us now via Skype, and that would be none other than Paul Reed, who is here with us this morning. Paul, good morning.
Good morning, Scott.
Thank you for being with us. And again, things look very festive at your home.
Well, I think we're getting in the holiday spirit.
Good. Well, that's wonderful. So it's good to see you and good to have you here. And the topic of the program this morning is a little bit. We're going to beat up on the media just a little bit. You're telling me, right?
Well, you know, Scott, so many times on your show you take archaeologists to task, so I thought a little bit of turnabout would be fun.
Fair's fair. In the spirit of the holiday season, why not? There you go. But I don't mind. And I think it's interesting because the paper you sent me talks a little bit about how some of us in the media tend to get a little excited, and maybe some facts are exaggerated just a little bit in headlines and things like that, because we certainly want, the idea of the media is it's a business in most cases, a for-profit business in many cases, not this media entity, but the idea being, the media entities want folks to read their stories, to watch their programs, to listen to their programs, and so when that happens, we see some of these headlines that may or may not be 100% accurate. Is that a fair statement?
It is a fair statement. And of course, we live in the age of instant gratification. We have multiple devices to bring information to us. We can be on our tablets, our phones, we can be watching TV, listening to the radio,
right.
Have the internet going with a live feed of something. So we get inundated with a lot of information. But, I was thinking about this with a little time depth, and I think if going back even several hundred years, the media, especially print media, which is what we're talking about more than 100 years ago.
Oh, I don't mind beating up on them, so that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't about radio, Scott. But with print media, you want to write headlines that get people's attention so that they will pick up your paper, your magazine, whatever it is. And that, again, has a long time depth in the history of publishing and printing presses way back hundreds of years ago. So that, that's understandable. But, the intersection that I want to talk about today is sort of the headline grabbing, 30 seconds, maybe 10 seconds of a headline. Is the reader going to read it and dig a little deeper? And the intersection of that with sort of archaeological stories, which people naturally are drawn to, I think, a lot of folks very interested in. Use of terms like mystery, surprise, and especially some of the more, hyped up things about gruesome findings in some corner of the planet where, people practiced some violence, which we know did happen.
Right.
And the other big issue for us in the Southwest and in America is, the fact that modern Native American folks get caught up in this, and a lot of times their stories are not told. We sensationalize things in the past, talk about the wonders and the mystery of Chaco Canyon, as though Chaco was built by people who left the planet, or who moved on, and we don't know who they are. We do know who those folks are. The modern Pueblo people are descended from Chaco Canyon. This is not a mystery. But if you go online and Google and type, mystery of Chaco Canyon, you'll get lots of stuff about that, and you'll get this notion that these folks have disappeared from the planet, and that is absolutely incorrect. So, yeah, I just want to kind of throw this out, as a topic to talk about. And, I think a lot of times in the media, every topic gets dealt with at such a minimal sort of snapshot level that unless you click on that article online or you dig into the larger print media article, you don't really come away with a good understanding. So, this crosses a lot of topical areas, but I think it's particularly an acute problem in archaeology, and as we talk about Native Americans past and present.
Sure. And I think you and I have talked about it numerous times, Paul Reed, and you've been very patient with me as I try to understand, again, some of this narrative on our area, and we've certainly, I think, seen a little bit of the narrative changing just a little bit about what happened to the inhabitants of places like Chaco Canyon and Salmon Ruins and Aztec ruins and things like that. We've kind of gotten away from the term Anasazi, which I remember being bandied about all the time when I first got to this area, going on almost 30 years now. But we've kind of, I think, updated the narrative a little bit and gotten a better understanding too of what did happen in these places and why there aren't people that are still living in these places today, even though there are descendants living not too far away.
Right, exactly, and I think if we look worldwide at things, there is this general fascination that a lot of us have. Certainly, many people in the public. We look at places over in Europe like Stonehenge, and obviously this is a monumental piece of architecture and a whole series of very interesting sites that date around 4,000 years ago. And none of the people who built Stonehenge are still living next to it. And of course, this is thousands of years, so this isn't a big surprise, but we look at these things and we go, wow, how did this happen? How did this get achieved? And if you type in mystery of Stonehenge, you'll get lots and lots of Google hits. And I've actually done this fairly recently. There are some kernels of good articles and knowledge, but I think part of what we're fighting here as well is just the human tendency to sort of enliven our lives, right, in the 21st century. And we live fairly mundane lives, most of us who are fortunate enough, to have enough and doing well economically. So we're interested in times and peoples when things weren't as great, right?
Sure.
So
right.
We're naturally drawn, and especially to some of the more macabre things that might have happened in the past. So we want to learn about the mysteries of Stonehenge. We want to wonder what happened at the amazing Irish site of Newgrange, which actually is 1,000 years older than Stonehenge and is an amazing passage tomb that dates to about 3200 BC. A true mystery in that case is we don't know who the people are who built that site, that Neolithic site 5,000 years ago. So archaeologists are continuing to investigate this, and certainly more discoveries every day. So, this is not to say, as part of the discussion, that there aren't things that archaeologists, historians, researchers truly don't understand. We have a lot of mysteries. But what this article written by my colleague, used to work for Archaeology Southwest and is now at a university in the Netherlands, Louis Bork, wrote it with Chippewa Native American who's a student. Her name's Ashley Thompson. She's at the University of Arizona. What they were trying to unlock is the idea that these media headlines a lot of times erase Native American peoples from the story because we simply talk about a mystery. We say, we don't know what happened here. And if people don't get past that headline or the first paragraph and really kind of dive into the story, even if it's only 10 paragraphs long, then they're missing out on what the actual essence of that particular story was. And if what they did is they surveyed headlines across a lot of different media, and they found high occurrences of mystery, disappearance, and this isn't just about people in our neck of the woods, the Chaco Canyon and the like, but really across the Americas. The word mystery comes up a lot. And, there are very interesting things that happened in America's Native American past, and archaeologists are beginning to understand those. Most of them are not in the realm of absolute mystery anymore. So this is something that those of us on this particular soapbox, just want people to understand. And that if we make it too mysterious and mystical and strange in the past, then we're not honoring the people who are still here, who are directly descended, in many cases, from the peoples who built these amazing sites.
Sure.
It's about connecting up that narrative.
Right.
It's one way to think of it.
Well, I agree with you, and I think we're doing, again, a better job of doing that, Paul Reed, than maybe we used to, and that's something that we should be talking about as well. My guest this morning, Paul Reed, is here, local archaeologist. He works with Archaeology Southwest and Salmon Ruins, and we are talking a little bit about the media's portrayal of archaeology in its pages and on its airwaves and on its internet sites and things like that. Good morning to our viewers who are watching us from all over the place on the KSJE Facebook page and YouTube. We've had a lot of folks saying hello from Kirtland and Aztec and other locations as well. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. If you do have a comment about our conversation, you can share it on our Facebook page, and I'll share it with Paul Reed, and we can address that as well this morning. And I guess the other issues too, Paul, there are certainly some cultural sensitivities that go in when you're talking about Native Americans, and the other thing too is with some archaeologists, it's up to you all to tell the story. There's not maybe a lot of Native American representation in the field of archaeology, but I imagine it's growing like in everywhere else.
Right. This is an issue that is really at the top of the list of concerns for most archaeologists today, is how do we integrate different narratives, the views of the folks who are descended from people that a lot of us archaeologists are studying. A lot of us are archaeologists of Euro-American or other ethnicities or descent groups, and these are not our own people's history that we're looking into. So yeah, we were trying really hard, and we've talked about this on the show, to really up our level of contact and cooperation and collaboration with different groups who are interested in learning more about their own pasts. For a lot of Native Americans, I think the process of archaeology is not a particularly palatable one. I think people get upset, different groups do, with some of the standard archaeological approaches we use, like excavating archaeological sites. So those concerns have sparked a real debate in the larger field of archaeologists, with the thousands of us who do different things in different parts of the country, and we gather every year, for different meetings. And these are really important topics these days, to sort out how to do archaeology in a respectful way that pays proper respect to the people who are living here now in our different communities and are descended from these older sites. So, we've talked about this. We have recently collaborated with the Pueblo of Acoma to do a project that gets Acoma tribal leaders and elders out onto the landscapes of Greater Chaco to connect with ancestral places, and in some cases with a more explicit need to look at areas that might be leased for oil and gas development, and to be sure that sites that are important to, again, beginning with the Pueblo of Acoma, we plan to do other studies with other pueblos going into next year to allow folks to look at the landscape and say, hey, this is an area that's important to us, this is in our oral history, and we'd like to see a little more protection. So yeah, I think, as you said, Scott, we're doing a better job on this. I think archaeologists, anthropologists, and the general public have really, this has been a long process, and we have many decades of not paying proper attention to the concerns of other groups who are not part of our dominant group in America. So, I think it's long past time to begin to address these, and I'm glad that I'm part of doing that with the organization we work with. But it is important that, every once in a while we hammer on the media and say, hey, let's get out some stories that really reflect what's going on in the world and the connections of people living in New Mexico today to these old places, these ancient sites.
Sure.
And so, this is part of my soapbox. So I thank you, Scott Michlin, for inviting me on to talk about this.
Well, that's all right. We get you on the soapbox every month, and we're glad to do that, Paul Reed. So I think it's an important topic to talk about. And again, it wasn't that long ago that Native American remains and sites weren't treated with as much respect as we treat them now. There's a new federal law that dictates how that's done. I think that came about, correct me if I'm wrong, in the 1970s, about some of the Antiquities Act and things like that. And so there is a mixed history of some of these things, and then how the media reported on these things. Because again, the narrative for a long time was all the ruins in our area were inhabited, and then all of a sudden these people disappeared, and we don't know what happened to them. But regular listeners and watchers of this program certainly know from our conversations, Paul Reed, that we do feel we have a pretty good idea of where these individual groups went and how they assimilated into the other Native American groups that were living at that time, maybe more in the Rio Grande corridor over in northern Arizona and those types of places in the Zuni area, as you have taught me over the years. And so do I have the narrative close to being correct now?
Right, and and that's a narrative that we're constantly adding to, and again, by cooperating, doing joint projects with different groups, the Pueblos, Navajos, and other folks, we're bringing their perspectives into this, and I think ultimately we're already seeing this, but we're going to end up with a much richer view of what unfolded on the landscapes of the San Juan Basin and elsewhere, as we continue this work. And, for me, that's a particularly exciting time, because I think archaeology, the way we practice it in North America, has long labored under this notion that archaeological data are privileged. These are the best data we can get to talk about, what we think happened in different places in the past. And I think most of us archaeologists are pretty clear at this point that that is not true, that we need a broad range of narratives and perspectives, and that's how we're really going to come to a better understanding of this story. And it's an interesting story. It's a fascinating story.
You bet. My guest, local archaeologist Paul Reed, is here from his home in the Taos area in New Mexico, and he's joining us via Skype this morning for our visual radio audience who's watching on Facebook and YouTube. And Paul, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, more on this topic. I think more about what maybe just normal human beings do when there's a gap in the story, and our minds tend to go a little crazy when we talk about the mysteries and things maybe that we don't know about ancient civilizations, and then you get all kinds of internet theories and conspiracy theories and everything else going on. So we'll talk maybe about that when we come back in just a moment, right here with my guest on KSJE. The time right now, everyone, is coming up on 8:29.
How rural America is turning into a digital desert.